Kate and Ty Break It Down is brought to you by Sony Pictures Classics, presenting On Swift Horses, starring Daisy Edgar-Jones, Jacob Elordi, Will Poulter, Diego Calva, and Sasha Kaye. Mariel and her husband Lee are beginning a bright new life in California when he returns from the Korean War. But their newfound stability is upended by the arrival of Lee's charismatic brother, Julius, a wayward gambler with a secret past. A dangerous love triangle quickly forms when Julius takes off in search of the young card cheat he's fallen for. Mariel's longing for something more propels her into a secret life of her own, gambling on racehorses and exploring a love she never dreamed possible. On Swift Horses opens April 25th, only in theaters. Get tickets now at onswifthorses.com.
No matter how you travel, it's good to have a plan. Some people plan every minute. No sleep, bus, museum, another museum. While others only plan to take it day by day. When it comes to your finances, a plan is just as important. You can count on Credit Karma to give you the insights you need to understand your options, so you can take charge of your financial path and find your way to money. Explore how you can make financial progress with confidence today. Intuit Credit Karma. Karma you can count on.
All right, guys, welcome back to Kate and Ty Break It Down. Today, we're super excited.
Erin.
We have our friend Erin. We actually have been friends on TikTok for a while now, and we talk to each other very regularly.
All the time, I feel like. We talk all the time.
Yep.
And so we're just so excited to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here, guys. I'm so happy to finally get to see you in person and be here in front of you. It's so
I
nice.
know.
We joke around like Erin's like our adoptee mom.
That's what
like,
we call you.
I know, and I'm like, feel like you guys are like my kids at this point. I just want to like help you guys, and like, you know what I mean. Like, you're just such good people, and I always enjoy talking to you guys so much. So it's been really nice to get to know you guys.
Same.
Well, you're the first adoptee that we're interviewing, so
I love
Yeah.
this.
we feel honored that you're the first one.
Oh, I feel honored to be here. I really do.
because-
I'm blown away by this whole thing and being able to talk about this at this platform. It's amazing.
Well, did you ever expect talking about it on TikTok to even do anything?
No, and I honestly just started talking about it on TikTok to find the community. Like, I really didn't ever expect to become an advocate or for anybody to even like listen or care about what I had to say. I genuinely just did it for my own personal stuff. I just wanted to find other people that had a similar experience. I was really just coming out of the fog myself a few years back when I started getting on TikTok.
Just a few years ago?
Yeah,
Oh.
it really, I mean, honestly, my best friend was the one that really brought me out of the fog and started like giving me information and showing me things. And when I got on TikTok, I was still a little bit in the fog, I feel like, and it's watching videos from the TikTok community, from the adoptee community that really brought me out completely and allowed me to start advocating for other adoptees.
So if people don't know who you are, can you kind of tell a breakdown of like who you are, where you came from, a little bit of your story?
Sure. My name is Erin, and I was adopted as an infant at 5 days old. My adoption story is a little bit crazy. My birth mother had 2 children before me. And when she got pregnant with me, her OBGYN basically was like, well, you already have 2 kids. You're not really taking great care of them. I really want a baby. Why don't you just let me adopt your baby? So she went through the entire pregnancy with the assumption that she was going to that I was going to be adopted out to the OBGYN, the doctor that was to deliver me. When I was born addicted to speed, and the OBGYN's husband was like, absolutely not. I do not want a baby that is drug addicted. They just foresaw, problems happening in the future. So I was kind of just left in the wind. They were going through the same lawyer that my adoptive parents had adopted my brother through 2.5 years before. So they basically just called the lawyer and they said, do you have any other adoptive parents that have gone through the process, have been approved, and are, waiting for another child? He just pulled the file, called my dad, my adopted dad, and said, hey, we have this baby girl sitting here. Do you want her? My dad said, sure. And it's funny, he was actually supposed to give a speech overseas at a convention, and he didn't go because they were going to pick me up at the lawyer's office. And there was a terrorist attack. And everybody that was in the row that he would have been sitting in was killed.
No way.
They say, he always tells me that I saved his life by being born, and by just the way the circumstances happened, it ended up saving his life. So
That's intense.
it's really intense.
Wait, so the lawyer office, how does that work? So you're born, and the OBGYN's husband's like, no.
Yep.
And then where do you go from there? Do you go to
I
the
was in
lawyer's?
the NICU because I was born addicted to drugs. So I was in the NICU for a while. My records show that. And then they released me. The lawyer secretary came and picked me up from the hospital.
And like, how long were you with this lawyer secretary? Do you even know?
I don't know. I guess just from the time they left the hospital and they brought me to the lawyer's office. And I have pictures of my adopted mom, them handing me to her in the office.
So they signed off, because in order for the lawyer or secretary to pick up a baby, that's, totally irrelevant to her. They had to, your bio mom had to have signed something, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming according to her, I actually just met her last year, and according to her, she gave birth and literally like within hours was like, I'm leaving. She said I couldn't even be in the hospital with you because I was so upset that I couldn't be there. She actually left. She went home and had to come back because she was bleeding. She almost bled to death when she went home. So she did end up back at the hospital, but I was already, had been taken away or wherever I was. But yeah, it was.
That's
pretty
crazy.
Intense. Yeah, the part about it that really upsets me, I think, is the fact that the OBGYN was like, well, I want a baby.
I was just going to say that.
And you're a teen mom, and you know what I mean? You're already not doing so great with the first two that you have. Let me just take your baby. And literally, the entire time was giving her care, giving her money.
That is so weird to me.
It was coercion. It was coercion and manipulation.
Predatory.
100%.
For an OBGYN, a professional to...
And I think back then it was pretty normal for OBGYNs to
offer this stuff. Wow, because I would have been so turned off. I would have been like, what? I'm never seeing you again after I leave here. That's creepy.
But then there was my birth mom who was living in a basement in her parents' house with no power, no heat, two kids living on a floor, and she sees this doctor who's prevalent in the community and has money and has this husband and this great house, and she's like, well, you're better, this kid's probably better off with you anyway. So, you know what I mean? You're presented this situation, what are you supposed to do?
And obviously you were born addicted, so your mom obviously struggled.
She was struggling.
Right.
And this is a good place to say that many things can be true in adoption. Yeah. I can acknowledge the fact that I would not have been better off had I not been placed in an adoptive home. If I had been raised by my birth mother, I would have had a very hard life. I had 8 siblings, and they were all removed over time from my birth family.
Into foster care?
Into foster care.
Okay.
Group homes, such things. Except for the youngest, who somehow, was able to stay with my mom. She had kind of gotten it together enough that they never removed him. But I can acknowledge the fact that I would not have had an easy life in my birth family. Also, while saying that I didn't have the greatest life in my adopted family either. Two things can be true. Just because you go to a wealthier family that has giving you more opportunity doesn't mean that you're still missing where you came from and the people that mirror you and that you can mirror and genetically.
And your adoption was a closed adoption, correct?
It was a closed adoption. And my mom actually, my adoptive mom actually lied to me. And my dad never really said anything. He just kind of stayed to the side. He was a very passive human being. But my adoptive mom always told me that my files were sealed. I was not allowed to have any information until I was 18. That was the law, is what I was told. I never knew any different to question it or to ask questions about it. I just assumed, the law is that if you're a minor, you aren't allowed to have this information. That was what I thought.
Right.
She passed away not long after I turned 18, and it kind of just put everything to the side. I just didn't really at that point. It wasn't I'm going to go find my birth family. I was kind of dealing with other things. So I just never really did anything with it until I got into my 30s, and I was like, you know what? I think I want to try to find my birth family. But they did. They lied. They definitely did.
And how did you find out about them lying and it not being sealed and that you could have known?
Well, they just. My dad just handed me the file one day.
Oh, really? Holy shit!
Wow. I was like, Dad, I want to find my birth mom. You know what I mean? And he was like, Oh, I have that file somewhere. I was like, okay. And he literally just handed it to me, and then I had the information, and I'm going through it, and I'm looking at it, and I don't think I really processed it all because. As I actually just found it again, I don't know, whenever I had posted all that stuff about it, it was a few months back, but I don't even think I realized when I first looked at it that the literal receipt for my adoption was in there. I could see all the costs, what everything cost, and my medical records from the hospital were in there. All of my mom's identifying information was in there. I knew that she had given birth twice before me, that I had 2 siblings.
Right off rip, I opened the file. You knew
right off the bat, all that information was right there. So then I think okay, so my mom obviously saw that, so she knew all of these things about my birth mom. So all the times that she would tell me stories oh, you know, maybe she just loved you so much that she wanted you to have a better life, or like, oh, you know, all these stories and all these things that she would say like weren't true, and she knew that they weren't true because she had the information in front of her. You know what I mean? So there was definitely a feeling of betrayal once I found out all of these things.
Well, you said 18 years old is when after she passed, and then you didn't do anything until 30. I mean, that's a whole decade.
Yeah.
So, like, that whole decade were you just kind of like?
I was very much in the fog, and I was very much of the opinion that like, oh, my parents that raised me are my parents, and I don't need anything else, and I don't need to know where I came from because it's not relevant. And like a lot of the things that people in the fog say, like they really truly don't think that it matters where they came from because they had a good life, and they felt as though they had a good life. So they don't feel the need to find, you know.
Well, for people who don't know, what is the fog?
So for me, the way I explain it is when you're a child and you're adopted, everybody constantly tells you adoption is beautiful. You should be grateful. People saved you. People wanted you. They chose you. You know, adopted parents say things like, I grew you in my heart, or like you were a gift from God, or all. And it's always put in such a positive light, adoption. And as an adoptee, you feel that abandonment and you feel that loss and you feel that grief. But as a kid, you're not really sure what those feelings are.
Yeah.
And you're told, no, not that. It's beautiful. You should be grateful. Everything about it is beautiful. You were saved. Now look at this great life that you get to have. So that's the narrative that you choose to go with because it's easier to deal with. And it's much easier to internalize negative feelings about grief and loss and abandonment than it is to accept them and try to talk about them, especially when a lot of adoptive parents are not willing to talk to you about them. A lot of adoptive parents don't want to talk about the negative feelings that you have towards your adoption. So you do internalize them. And then as you get older, that's what we call the fog. You end up regurgitating the narrative that adoption's beautiful. I was saved. Adoption saves people. People use adoption to build these beautiful families, and that's what you're telling everybody else. But internally, you have this like struggle where you're like, I don't know, like
almost feel like you're not allowed to feel that way.
Right, you're not allowed to feel that way because it's beautiful, and that's what you've been told.
And which is sad because I feel like as parents, I would want my child to come and speak to me and not worry about how I'm going to react about things that are going to hurt you. Like if it hurts my feelings a little bit, I'm going to keep that to myself, but we're going to process this together and figure out how I can help you with whatever you're feeling. Like healthy parents do that for their children.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't know what the fog is, and it's fear, obligation, and guilt. And so it's like those three things are exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Like your fear, I'm obligated to make sure my adopted parents know that yay, I love this.
happy.
And then the guilt for even feeling internalized feelings of I kind of don't feel right about certain things or whatever. And it's like you almost, every time I hear people explain it, it's like adoptees are almost like forced to put themselves on the back burner, like how
absolutely.
they, you know what I mean? In order to make sure all the adults,
we're responsible for
good.
their feelings, right? Absolutely.
Right.
As an adoptee, you are 100% responsible for the adults' feelings around you.
I hate that.
But I mean, it just is what it is. It's why I'm hyper responsible now. It's why I am the way that I am, though, is because I always felt responsible for other people's feelings. I never wanted to say anything that was going to upset my adoptive mom, and she was super sensitive about things.
Oh,
like,
she was.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
because anytime anybody would say things like, "Oh, you look like your mom," and I would say, "Oh, I'm adopted. I can't look like my mom," you know, and she would launch into the, "Oh, I saved her from this and that," and blah blah blah, and it was always like this whole thing, but she couldn't stand it when I would correct people and say, no, I don't look like her. It's not like I couldn't possibly look like her. She's not biologically my mom.
And you're speaking fast. You're not trying to
right. To me, like that was just common sense. It was just me being like, no, I really don't look like her. Like that's a weird thing to say.
Right.
And other people just being like, oh, and then like people kind of get like uncomfortable when you say that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So then there's that. So then as a kid, you realize that you're making other people uncomfortable when you talk about your adoption. When you say, I don't look like my family, and you make them feel uncomfortable. And so you're all of a sudden responsible for everybody else's feelings. So you just talk about that positive, happy experience that you have with adoption.
Well, and plus that's all you're taught growing up from a young kid. That's all you're hearing, like you said, all around you. We saved you. It's beautiful. You have to look at this great life. So, of course, a kid that's heard that their whole life, they're going to grow up saying those exact same things.
Yes.
I feel like the amount of pressure is so unfair. Like that to literally be a kid, didn't choose to be adopted. Now I have to also deal with my own identity stuff internally, not express it to anybody, and also make sure I emotionally monitor all these adults in the situation.
And
like,
I mean,
that is literally
it's
crazy.
all the time. Like you go to school and they're like, and your teacher's like, all right, it's family tree day. And you're like, oh, well, which family do I choose? Like, and then the teacher's like, well, the family that's raising you. Like, and they act like you're crazy for even questioning which family to use.
Right.
And then you're like, well, what? Like, and then you're like, well, I don't really know where my other family is from. And then you're sitting there and you're like, where is my other family from? What, you know, am I Irish? Am I Italian? Am I this? Am I that? What's their last name? And like, you're sitting there and like, I was always just so distracted when we were doing things like that, when it involved like any type of talking about any type of family, that like, because my brain would just wander into like, well, I have another family somewhere else. I don't know anything about them, but I know that they exist, you know? So there's just so much confusion as a child. And if you don't have a healthy outlet for that, you internalize it. And again, adoptees internalize so much. We're just expected to do so. And that's where the fog comes from.
The unicorn sitter doesn't just magically appear. Have you ever tried to find a babysitter and end up feeling like you're casting for a reality show? Like Next Top Sitter, but without a single good contestant? That was me until I found Sitter City. It's not some endless scroll of random profiles. It's more like a curated experience. Real reviews from parents, background checks, ID verifications, and filters that actually work. Whether you need someone for a regular after-school gig or just a night out, you can find someone you trust. I didn't just find a sitter, I found the sitter. Go to sittercity.com and take the guesswork out of finding care. Breathe easier knowing your kids are in good hands. Visit sittercity.com today to get the care that you need.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quests to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
And I feel like it's almost like you said, it's easier for adoptees to stay in the fog because it's hard to like, because once you open the door, you can't go backwards. You know, you can't go back into the fog. Once you're out of it, it's a wrap. Like, so it's almost like they hold on to it in a way to keep them like safe. And so, yeah, and I just feel like that.
And they love to stop and tell us about, and listen, listen, I love when people have happy adoptions. I am the biggest, when people have good, healthy, loving families that became educated and trauma informed and they're raising these adoptees correctly and they allow them in their bio families and they encourage them and they support them. I love hearing good, happy adoption stories. People always tell us, oh, you guys don't want to hear happy adoption stories. Yes, we do. We just don't necessarily believe them all the time.
Yeah, right.
We don't necessarily believe what you're saying is accurate about your adoption because you're in the fog. So it's like, and then we're told all the time that we're being negative and that we're like, we're not allowing other adoptees to have their voice. But it's not, we're just basically saying like, guys, maybe just look a little bit further into what happened to you and to like why you stopped to tell the entire internet that you don't have trauma. Because healthy, healed people aren't going to stop on a video about adoption trauma and tell them, oh, I had a great adoption. I don't have trauma at all. They're just going to keep scrolling.
Right, but they get defensive.
Because they know deep down that they have abandonment and loss and grief and they have those internalized issues that they never dealt with.
And also if they didn't have an environment that nurtured the expression of those things, then of course they're so used to keeping it inside, which is just like, I just feel like I learning the last couple of years about like how adoptees just like that has to affect everything growing up, how 100%. I make relationships work
with every aspect of life.
Every aspect, because you're constantly emotionally, which in my opinion, it's like a version of like you're self-betraying in order to keep everyone comfortable. Yeah. And that's always going to backfire. That's never going to be good for you. So it's like, and to not even believe that you have the freedom to express it is crazy because we've gotten so much backlash. Like, and I don't know if these adoptees are in the fog or not. I'm not sure, but they are very aggressive. I try to be not aggressive.
Anybody that's aggressive towards you for trying to speak the truth about adoption is just very unhealed. If they aren't even receptive to listening, then they're in the fog. I mean, it's not even wanting to understand something further that has affected your life in such a great way and is really just very prevalent in your life. That's where the fog comes from. That's the only way I can really explain it. And like you said, like the only way that I can really explain being adopted is I feel like I'm in a room full of people and like I'll get along and I'll talk to everybody and like I'll figure everybody out and like whatever, but I never feel like I like belong in the room. Do you know what I mean? Like I always feel like I'm kind of like on the outside of everything looking in. And I don't ever really make those connections with people, like really strong, deep connections.
Almost like detached a little bit.
I'm very detached, absolutely.
Because
and
it
most
keeps you
adoptees
safe.
that I talk to are very detached.
And do you
people.
think that's because like you're subconsciously afraid of somebody leaving, or
Oh, yeah, there's always going to be that internalized fear of abandonment.
Yeah.
Always. Because the person that was supposed to love me most on earth literally just gave me to somebody
Right.
else.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's when I don't know why people deny trauma from adoption.
Right.
I don't know either.
Your life started with the person who was supposed to love you the most giving you away to somebody else.
That's
They
traumatic.
abandoned you. They
Yeah.
gave you away. That's grief. That's loss.
Yes.
To not understand why people would have a negative feeling about that, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I just don't understand.
And you can
it.
also have a positive adoption experience and also be traumatized as a pre-verbal
Yeah.
trauma baby. Like that's
or you could have like a positive adoption, but also struggle with certain things and have feelings and emotions, and that's okay too.
But what I'm hearing a lot from adoptees, they don't think that it's either black or white. You can't.
Oh, right,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Two things can't
I
be true
see
at
that
once. I'm
too.
either really happy with my adoption or I'm not. And it's like, well, what about you know, you can still have the perfect adoptive parents, had the perfect, you know, being raised and raised in an environment that nurture everything, and you can still have fear, obligation, and guilt. And it's one of those things where it's like you said, like, why are you screaming at me? Mine was great. You're wrong. It's like, well, dude, like, and my whole thing is that, like, why would you minimize their experience? You are in the same community.
Correct.
You're in the same minority group. So if I had a really good experience and you had a bad one, I want to kind of hush and let you, because you had a bad one. And I think that's prioritized, right? You should.
and asking questions, learning, just be
learn,
curious,
right? Like how?
And why should we not talk about
Yeah.
the bad ones just because
Well,
somebody had a good one?
right.
Shouldn't it be the opposite? Shouldn't we be
Thank
like
you.
quiet about the good ones until all of them are good?
Yep.
Tyler
Like,
and I-
shouldn't we talk about the bad ones until they're all good? Because right now, adoptees are 8 times more likely to be abused.
Right.
Now, it's a $25 billion industry. Like, you want me to believe that there's not like weird, crazy things going on in a $25 billion
Yeah.
industry where people are literally buying children? Like, you know what I mean? Like, the fact that like people don't want you to talk about it is absolutely crazy to me.
It is
Or, like,
crazy.
They just don't even want to like acknowledge that maybe there's something else going on.
Well, no, and that's why it shows that it needs to be talked about more.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Tyler and I said just the few podcasts that we recorded yesterday was like, you know, until every single adoptee can say, I had a very open adoption, I felt very secure, I could express my feelings, you know,
was
all of
healthy.
the adults were a safe place. Like, until every single adoptee can say that, then there needs to be change.
The
because
system remains
not all of
broken.
them. Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
still broken. Because
And then everyone's like, well, what do you want me to do? Just like throw the kids in an orphanage? And it's like,
That's what they say.
They say the craziest stuff.
No,
They're
they
like,
do.
what should we just like throw them in a river? I'm like, yeah,
Right.
let's just
Sure.
throw them in the river. Like, let's just, right,
who
let's-
does that?
We're going to dispose of them. Like, no, like people don't seem to understand that like we're calling for reform of
Yeah.
the system. Like
Yes.
we're calling for reform. We want people to be educated. We want people who are adopting children or putting people in their home for a safe environment to be educated on trauma and where they came from and the things that they're going to be experiencing.
Yes.
So without being able to do that and then taking money out of the equation.
Right.
Yes.
Why is there any money being exchanged for human life? Like that just makes it unethical to begin with.
It does.
Right
And I
off rip.
actually just learned that, like, I had someone, an adoptee, write me from Australia and said, it is unheard of here. Adoption agencies are illegal in our country. And I was like, that makes me think, like, wow, Bethany would be illegal. Their operation would be illegal in this country.
Because adoption in Australia is a very last resort.
Yes.
They support birth mothers. They support they support women within their society so that they don't have to give children up for adoption.
There's resources.
There's resources. They give women resources so that they can keep their children. It's literally a last resort. And they say in this country, there's studies that show that 97% of birth mothers want to keep their child. They say that $5,000 is the difference between being able to keep your child and feeling safe and secure and supported and feeling like you need to give your child to somebody else. $5,000?
When in turn they're paying $50,000 to adopt a child.
And also getting a $16,000 tax credit for adopting. Like, that's insane to me right there. The fact that you're giving a tax credit to adoptive parents who are already kind of ahead of the game with being
Financially
middle
stable,
class and
obviously.
they're wealthy, and but you're not going to help the poverty-stricken birth mom who feels stuck. Like, we're so backwards by who we're prioritizing in this whole little system. It's like, it's insane. And when I found out that it was illegal to have adoption agencies, and she even wrote, she's like, because our country believes commodifying any children or any human life is wrong. And I'm like, holy shit.
Australia's
Hello?
awesome. Australia's adoption system is really well run. We could learn a lot from their social system.
And I think
just
people,
in general, but
I think people don't want to they get offended when I say industry.
Yeah.
It's not industry. It's like, well, it is.
It
though.
is. It's worth $25 billion. When something's worth that much money, it is an industry.
Yeah,
It is absolutely
and people are going to manipulate to protect that money interest. They're going to do lots of things to make sure that stays flowing.
When I talk about adoption reform, I regularly say that you're probably not going to be able to get your hands in a $25 billion industry and make change on that side of it. You have to take away the supply. So you have to make the change on the side of where are the babies coming from for adoption? How do we help the people that are having these babies keep their children so that we don't need safe external care for other children?
We should be prioritizing family preservation. And that
100%.
money should be going to that stuff instead of
tax credits
for adoptive parents who are already wealthy enough to buy a baby. We're backwards.
I couldn't agree more.
But you didn't go through an agency, right?
No, my parents just did a private lawyer. That was pretty common in the 70s and 80s. Was just private lawyers, and there weren't a lot of adoption agencies at that point. There was, Georgia Tan was going through neighborhoods and finding low-income people and saying, hey, you're pregnant, let me just scoop your baby and, here, we're going to make your life so much better and this baby's life so much better. Like literally walking the streets and taking infants from people. It's been predatory from the beginning.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's just a really predatory industry.
It is.
And I mean, you guys are prime examples of being coerced and manipulated and not having adult support and not having people in your lives that were like able to like say, hey, we can support you if you keep your child. Like this is what we can do for you to help you keep your own child. Like you guys are prime examples, and it was very public how manipulation and coercion happens, especially with open adoption.
Yeah. Right. I mean,
open adoption is the number one coercion tactic that's used as far as.
And I think people look like it's a beautiful thing that we've evolved from the old clothes stuff. We've actually gotten better. It's like it's not.
It's
better,
because they created open adoption because there was a lack of infants being placed, and so they were like, we need a different idea, we need a different way to go about this.
We need a prettier bow to put on it so people,
But then they didn't give any legal rights to the people who gave birth to the child, which just seems so backwards to me. Why wouldn't the people who gave birth to the child have legal rights to the child? In all reality, it should be enforceable on both sides because the power dynamic is what creates the coercion and the manipulation.
Yeah.
Yes.
The power dynamic is really unhealthy, and it's really unhealthy for the child.
And I also think the paperwork that's not legally enforceable, then what else is the paperwork besides a coercive thing?
Well, I mean, that's all it is. When you're sitting there signing paperwork, but you have somebody in your ear telling you you're in the driver's seat, it's going to look exactly how you want it to look, but legally you can't enforce that. Like, what are you supposed to expect? You're trusting that these adults are telling you the truth, and you're trusting that these adults want what's best for the child, knowing that you guys being in their life is what's best for them. Because you know what I mean? Like, children who have their healthy biological parents in their lives are going to be more successful. They have those genetic mirrors. They know where they came from. They aren't questioning everything about their lives. They aren't having all of the negative sides of adoption that adoptees and closed adoptions have. Like, it's just a healthier situation for them in general. But you get insecure adoptive parents.
Yeah, fearful. They get
They're,
scared.
Not trauma-informed, not healed.
Not child-centered.
Yeah.
Right,
They're not.
right.
If you're right off the bat saying that I want to adopt a child to build my family, you're not a child-centered human being.
Right.
You're not centering the child in adoption. You're centering your need to be a parent and to build your family. You shouldn't be adopting to build your family. You should be adopting to provide safe external care to a child that needs it.
Because that's what it was designed for.
That's centering the child.
Yeah.
That's what it's designed for. It's not there to build your family.
Right.
And it shouldn't be used as
And
a
I think
family
people
building
get that
tool.
very confused because they're like, when they say, oh, so I'm not allowed, like people who like will be negative and write me and stuff, and they're like, oh, so I'm not allowed to desire my own kid. And I said, I didn't say that.
Nobody owes you their kid,
Yeah,
though.
I never told you can't have a desire to have your own child. I'm saying you don't have to participate in a predatory, corrupt system to do that. And, you know, like it's
nobody owes you a child. And you know what I mean? You're building your family using someone else's crisis. That's not an ethical way to build your family. This woman over here is in crisis. She's not, you know what I mean? And then there's the people that, you know, that adopt the children and they're posting the babies online before the birth mother's even out of the hospital.
Oh,
Do you know what I'm saying?
One really.
Adelaide White. You want to talk about Adelaide White?
Which one is that one? I don't know. There's a couple that I've seen on
She's the bane of my existence. She's a content creator on TikTok.
Okay.
And she went through the whole IVF thing, and then they ended up adopting a baby. And literally, before they like left the hospital, and they're on TikTok with the baby. The birth mother is still recovering probably in the recovery room. And they're posting this baby on TikTok. And now it's just their whole entire platform is TikTok on TikTok is adoption and you know, this adopted baby. and showing this adopted baby to the world. But the baby's literally like, you're literally showing a child that's in in crisis. You know what I mean? Like, this child was just born, just removed from its mother. It's experiencing maternal separation, and here you are like exploiting it to the world.
And I was gonna say, like, and I think that people just look at it like, oh, it's just a baby, and it's like, yeah, but you don't if you look at the studies, like, those babies are actually, they're suffering.
Right.
That's why they can't, they're unconsolable. Yep. They're crying all the time, don't want to eat because they don't have the smell. They don't have the same heartbeat. Nothing. It's not normal or natural to them.
It's heartbreaking.
It's
really.
It's a literal stranger. You're giving it, like, that's what people don't seem to understand. Like,
Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. Fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Lowe's, Levi's, and Nike pay Rakuten to send them shoppers, and Rakuten then passes on a part of that payment to its members as cash back. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It's a no-brainer. Membership is free and easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's Rakuten. Your cash back really adds up.
When adoptive parents want to be in the hospital, there's no benefit for the child
at
all whatsoever. You going into a different room with that child and putting that child on a complete stranger doesn't do anything for that child. It doesn't regulate that child's needs in any way, shape, or form. It provides a warm, chest for them to lay on, but
it's not the mom's smell.
It's not. There's no chemical. Yeah. There's no chemical bond. There's no the mother's smell. It's not the same thing, and it's predatory. We were talking about Siobhan earlier. She's on TikTok, first mom, birth mom, and she's one of the most amazing human beings ever. But her story, the adopted parents were in the delivery room.
They were.
The adoptive father is holding her leg.
Oh, no.
While the baby is exiting her body.
Didn't he even cut the umbilical cord?
He cut the umbilical cord. There's pictures of him holding her leg. While he's holding spread eagle on the table, the baby's coming out, and he's holding her leg.
And she said from the beginning she didn't want them in the room.
She didn't want them in the room. They insisted.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's so...
And they're cosplaying birth.
Yeah. It's like some hands. It's like literally, it's a Handmaid's Tale shit.
It's Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
That is so... I did not. See that.
But that's not uncommon.
Right.
It's not. They want to be there because they can't have that experience for themselves, but they're taking it away from the person who's actually having the experience.
Right.
And I can't even imagine how uncomfortable it is to have, like...
Dude.
Some random guy.
I actually saw
really
a TikTok video
of
the adoptive parents in a hospital room, and the nurse brings in their baby, and the baby's unconsolable, crying.
Well, yeah.
And they're trying to get a video, and you can tell the mom's like, what's going on? She's really upset. Like, and it's like, and watching it, like, it literally got me emotional because I'm like, oh my God.
That baby wants
its mom. And the baby knows this is not my mom.
Oh, 100%.
And so when a baby is born with, specific survival instincts, they're immediately going to be unconsolable because they know they're with strangers. And I thought in my head, I'm like, whoa, I never thought about, the daughter we relinquished. Like, what was she doing in the nursery? Like, she was there.
Well, thank God she was in the nursery for like 30 minutes, and I was like, she needs to come to me.
We were like,
and
thank God
I held on to her for 3 days as
Yep.
much as I could. Yeah.
But watching that video, like, and you're right, the adoptive parents had one of their friends filming it because they thought it was going to be this, like,
beautiful moment where, like, we got our baby and the baby knew who I was and this and that, but the baby has no idea who you are.
You can see the mom actually look at the camera like, oh, stop recording. Like, this isn't good. And I'm like, this is so sad.
It's
because
so sad.
You're right. They're not thinking about the baby at all.
They're not. And they just think, like, oh, it's a baby. It has no clue.
And the issue,
they're not blank slates.
They're there because they're afraid that the birth mother is going to change her mind. They're there because they're afraid the birth mother is going to hold the baby and bond with the baby and not want to relinquish the baby. That's why they're there. That's why they're pushing. That's why they're like, hey, you've had enough time. Give us the baby, because they don't want you to change your mind.
To get connected.
Because when you give, I have 3 children. Yeah. When you give birth, like, your whole body you're just different after you give birth. Like, you're rushed with hormones and you're rushed with all these feelings and emotions and everything else. And as a birth mother, like, you should have that opportunity to, like, feel those feels and see your baby and bond with your baby and change your mind if you want to.
Absolutely. It's your right to do so.
It's your right to do that. And if they're sitting there holding your leg up,
right.
You're giving birth, like, how are you supposed to feel comfortable changing your mind?
And that's where,
happening?
That's where the coercion comes in, because then as a birth mom, you'll think to yourself, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings. I've made all these promises to them, and here they are in front of me. And if I change my mind, it's going to break their heart. Like,
I'm a huge advocate.
So you know what? Actually, kudos to your fucking sister.
I know.
Because his sister was going to choose adoption for our niece. And, you know, she rolled in that room sobbing, but she looked right at him and said, I can't do it, and I'm taking her home.
Oh, I love that.
And the adoptive
Yeah.
parents were so sweet. They were like, honey, it's okay.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be fine.
That's the only reaction there
and
should be.
And the adoptive mom, or she was going to be adoptive mom. She's like, you're going to be a great mom.
Yeah.
I know it. And then they held their composure.
When they left, they were
And then when
upset,
I
of
watched them
course.
walk out the hospital, I mean, she was just sobbing. So I'm not minimizing adoptive parents who,
No,
like
I'm not
they
either.
have their own feelings and they are allowed to grieve.
But I was just thinking that I'm like, damn, kudos to your sister, because she was very emotional.
went
She
up-
didn't want to do it
yeah.
because of the fear of hurting their feelings
Well,
and stuff.
she asked my mom to do it. My mom's like, honey, you have to tell them yourself. Like,
Yeah.
this
Well,
is
let's talk about the
important.
fact that like pre-birth matching just
Ugh.
shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, why do we?
I mean, you educated me on that. When you talked to me
Right.
about that, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense.
Right, because all of a sudden, if you like you match with somebody and they're going to be the parents, and now they're having a baby shower,
Yeah.
and they're making
had
a
the car seat,
nursery, and they
yeah.
got the car seat, and all their friends are excited, and they're doing gender reveals. And how are you supposed to change your mind when you're literally watching this family have all these experiences, expecting to get your baby, and then you're like sitting there, and you're like, well, I can't change my mind now because it would just completely, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it really takes away from your ability to keep your own child.
Especially when especially back then too. I was such a people pleaser.
Right.
Like
Oh,
I told you, like I'd be calling them on the phone like once a week, like like almost
you
pep
were.
talking them.
Yeah,
Like
'cause they
don't
were
worry, I'm not
scared.
going to change my mind. Like it's good. This is how it's going to be. And so for sure, I would have been, even if I wanted to change my mind, it would have been super hard for me, I think.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But she knew, like, I think, like, they knew that was the case, and that's why they were rushing you to, you know what I mean? They wanted the baby in their hands, like, ASAP. They wanted to be out of the hospital. You know, the exchange was in the parking lot. Like,
Yo, and
there was a lot of things about your situation that was, but very common and very normal. Like,
Yeah.
your
Right.
situation is not
Right.
abnormal. It's actually probably the most common story I hear with adoption.
Which is
Yeah.
crazy because it's so common, but we just happen to be on TV,
Right.
And people are they're able to see it and
But you can
witness it.
see it, like you could see the rabid look in the eye, and you can see it happening in real time, like just that incessant need to get the hands on the baby before anybody changes their mind. Or
And
just,
I think it's super important that it was documented
Yeah, me
and
too.
documented like authentically,
Yeah.
you know,
100%.
because it's important for people to see it. It's important for people to see, and even adoptees to see
Yeah.
that maybe they might think that their birth parent didn't love them or care about them, to see the struggles that we go through, to see how freaking hard it is sometimes. Like, all of that's important.
Well, I've
to
had a lot of
share.
adoptees write me and say that because of you guys being on the show and just watching you, I like had my hate and my anger and hatred towards my birth mom I thought I had just dissipated because I like was able to see her through you guys and like really know that I wasn't just thrown in the river.
I think
or
your
thrown in-
story
you know,
I think your story is incredibly important for adoptees to see. I know personally, I wish that I had adoptive parents, or I wish that I had birth parents like you. I do. I wish that
Erin.
my birth parents cared and were healthy human beings and wanted to be a part of my life and fought to be a part of my life. Like, I think a lot of adoptees see you and think like, wow, maybe I have birth parents waiting for me that are like that too. Or like maybe because a lot of the closed adoptions, like we really don't know what's
Right.
waiting for us on the other side. So like, I think that you give a lot of adoptees hope that maybe there are like good adoptive or good birth parents on the other side, because there are so many like really negative reunion stories. Like there's,
I know,
I mean, there are a lot of really unhealthy birth families that just
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
really got it together and are not. It's just, it doesn't go well when there's a reunion.
And it goes back to because in the beginning society failed them. Honestly,
Right.
I
Oh,
feel,
100%.
you
Like
know?
my birth mother was 100% failed. She was failed by
Yeah.
everybody in her entire life. Like she had a really hard life starting as a child, and then just was never able to recover. So like I give her some grace, and I give her I give her understanding. Like I totally understand. Like I have no ill feelings towards her. But like I feel as though that's a lot of birth mothers have.
And that's so
have that similar
sad.
issue.
That makes me want to like, I'll be your birth mom, Erin. I will be anybody's birth mom. Like, that makes me really kind of emotional. Like, that's sad.
I
Yeah,
just
it is
think it's so
sad.
important that you guys are speaking out despite the negative things that people have to say to you, because for adoptees, I think that you're giving adoptees hope that maybe there's somebody waiting for us out there that cares about us and loves us and wants to be a part of our life. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Because it's scary, because you don't know. And I know growing up, my mom would always say things to me like, oh, well, you know, maybe they moved on with their life and had another family, and you're just going to be like bothering
Oh.
them.
How does
if
that
you
make a
find
kid
them.
feel like?
They
Like,
would mind.
shit.
That was, but in the same breath, she would say things like, it would be like, oh, well, maybe she was a drug addict and couldn't take care of you in this, but then like, Or in the same breath, it would be like the other thing. Like, maybe she has this great life now and you're just going to be like disturbing her life.
And
so like,
that's going to make you feel like shit as a kid.
Exactly. 100%. But then I was always thinking, like, do I really want to like look for them? Because you know what I mean? Like, again, like I would feel awful if I like found my birth mother and she had all these kids and the husband that didn't know about me, and then like it like ruined her life. You know what I mean?
Right.
You don't want to ruin.
And hopefully I don't
life.
ever give bad advice, but I mean there are adoptees that write me and they'll say like, I just don't know if if they love me or they care. And my response is always like, I can tell you one thing right now, that no matter what is going on in your birth mom's life, that she loves you. Yeah. Like, and even with your birth mom, like she might have not made good decisions in her life and messed up in certain ways, but I know as a birth mom, deep in your soul, like you love your children, all your children, deeply.
She definitely told me like I felt like a piece of me was missing my whole life. Yeah. And like she did eventually like blame her drug problem on me not being there.
Oh, really?
It was a very odd situation.
Oh, that's different.
It was a very odd situation. But but like it was more or less like, you weren't there, and, my life was never the same, and I never was able to get my act together because I felt like something was missing. Was kind of the
and it's honestly, like, honey, I wouldn't have been able to save you. Like, that's your journey, too.
Right.
Well, that's also not fair either, because I think even that's a example of a birth parent playing on that fear, obligation, and guilt that you are just have to have.
We get it from all angles. The adoptee really does get it from all angles. It's in the triad, we are definitely the ones that I think take the brunt of the negativity.
And that's why it all needs to change. I mean, I'm hearing adoptees screaming from the rooftops of how things need to change and how things need to be different. And adoption very much plays it as in, it's all needs to be child-centered and they are the most important. But as we are being shown, they aren't the most important, and nobody is listening to them. Nobody's listening to about the changes that need to happen when, in fact, that's the only person and people we need to be listening to. Like, it blows my mind.
Yeah.
When was the last time you needed to go to the doctor, but you pushed it off? I'm too busy. I don't need help. Or, kids. Who's going to watch the kids? I think we've all been there. Booking a doctor appointment can feel so daunting. But thanks to ZocDoc, there's no reason to delay. They make it so easy to find and book a doctor who's right for you. With ZocDoc, you've got options. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and are highly rated by verified patients. Appointments made through ZocDoc also happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/KateandTy to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/KateandTy. ZocDoc.com/KateandTy.
Mochi Health is here to help you start your weight loss journey with caring, personalized support. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who truly listen and understand your unique needs. Eligible patients can access affordable GLP-1 medications delivered right to their door each month. No insurance? No problem. Mochi Health accepts FSA and HSA, making care accessible and affordable. And with 24/7 customer service, you'll never feel alone on your path to better health. Get started with Mochi Health today. Take the free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership. That's joinmochi.com with promo code AUDIO40.
Were you raised always knowing you were adopted?
Yeah, I never didn't know that I was adopted. My parents, they definitely it was always something that I was told. I don't ever remember being told that I was adopted. So I'm assuming that they read me books or did whatever age appropriate.
Just raised knowing it.
Right. That was the only thing that I think they did right was telling me that I was adopted. There's plenty of adoptees out there that aren't told that they're adopted and either find out later in life or are told later in life. And I just can't even fathom the trauma of having a moment where you found that out, where you went from not knowing to knowing. I think that one of the most important things adoptive parents can do is always make sure that their child knows that they're adopted. Do not ever say, well, I don't know, what's a good time for me to tell my kid that they're adopted?
Right.
Yeah, no.
From the second they understand words, tell them they're adopted.
That's one of the things that Brandon and Teresa have always done too with Carly. Like, they have always talked about it ever since she was little. Yeah. They have always read her books, and people would come and talk and be like, "Oh, she's so beautiful," and she'd be like, "Oh, she's adopted," and. So and I feel like that's so healthy. Like, just raise them just knowing.
Right, because what's the alternative? The alternative is that you don't know that you're adopted. You have no chance of getting an accurate medical history. You're literally going to the doctor and giving the medical history of like the family that you live with. It has nothing to do with you. Like, that's dangerous.
It is dangerous.
It's dangerous to not know who you're biologically related to.
And then, really just like the trauma of just one day being like, "You're 12 now, and so we have something to tell you," or whatever age they decide.
I can't even imagine I was well aware that I didn't act like my family and that I didn't look like
really?
that. Yeah, growing up, I always and it became really obvious when I met my actual birth family, and the mannerisms and the way that oh my God, it was absolutely insane. Like, I instantly felt like I was with people that I belonged with.
So you grew up kind of knowing that mannerisms were different?
Yeah. Like, nothing was ever the same. We didn't really think the same way. We didn't talk the same way. We didn't have any, you know what I mean? Like, when you see other people, you're like, "Oh, you look just like your mom. Oh, you just laugh just like your mom. Oh, you I always notice when families look like each other. Like, I love seeing genetics, and I love like seeing families that look alike and talking about that kind of stuff. So I always as a kid would notice oh, look at those two girls, those two people over there. They're laughing alike, or you know what I mean. Yeah. And I would be like, oh, I don't laugh like anybody in my family.
Like, hypersensitive to it.
Right. So I feel like, I don't know, just I can't imagine growing up not knowing that you're adopted and not understanding why you don't match anybody around you. It has to be so confusing.
Yeah.
Right. It has to be really confusing.
Did you, when you were growing up though, did you have did religion play any part?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, because I wanted to know, it seems, all the messages that I'm receiving, it seems very common.
Yeah, I mean, we were at church every Sunday. I mean, my parents were religious. We were just Presbyterian, which is one of the it's a very open religion. We're very LGBT friendly, and it's a very open religion. It's more of a community than it is a religion. But we were definitely in church every Sunday and part of that community.
Do you think that played a part in any of the guilt or any of the what did that play any part?
I mean, it definitely when I would hear you're God's gift, that kind of thing always really bothered me, and I could never really understand why. And now as an adult, I understand. Now that I'm a part of the community, and I understand so if wait, what about the kids that went into abusive adoptive homes? Was that God's will as well? Did God will them to have horrible lives? What? How? I don't understand. So yeah, I guess religion definitely when people make it a part of it, you question things because you're there's other adoptees that are in really bad situations. Was that God's intention for them to have horrible families? How do you justify that? If I was God's gift to you, they were God's gift to that family. How do you justify the fact that they had a horrible life?
So you're saying that when people would say God's gift, you're about God's gift, that kind of makes it's confusing because at the same time it's so in order for God's gift to be you, I had to punish or make a birth mom miserable and sad. Or what,
was it God's intention to punish the birth mom who now has this empty hole in her life?
Yeah,
it's bringing religion into the adoption story is just a very.
I just didn't know how prevalent it was until all.
I think it's prevalent in a lot of other religions. I know Mormons really push adoption. I know that it's really big in a lot of the purity religions, as you guys know that people who can't have children, having a family is that's what they base their whole entire existence on, is the ability to have a family in those religions.
Which I wonder if that plays into the adoptive parents kind of subconsciously prioritizing their own need to be a parent because
they're influenced. Think that it does.
Yeah,
that's why the infertility trauma, with people in the Mormon community, when they suffer from infertility, having a family is the ultimate goal, and
and having as many kids as they can.
That's what they're encouraged to do. So there's a lot of shame that comes with not being able to provide that. So I think that adoption is heavily pushed in religious communities because they have to have those families or else they're not relevant in the community.
Yeah, see, that's kind of that, and that's also where I feel that should not play a part in it at all.
No.
We need to keep that out of the whole equation because it makes it murky and it's just messy, I feel like.
I mean, there's really just the only reason that anybody should be placed in for adoption is because they need safe external care. We shouldn't be building our families using other people's children. It just shouldn't happen. It's just not an
Well, that's also
way
my next point is what are the other options besides adoption? I hear all the time, and I like to hear from
what do you think would be
what are the other options?
Or an ethical adoption? Is there any ethical adoption?
No. I mean, in an ideal world, a fully open adoption that is legally enforceable on both sides, almost a co-parenting situation, is what's best for the child if it's available and the parents are healthy people and the adoptive parents are healthy people and they're able to provide that healthy relationship for the child. Like, that's an ideal situation for me because everybody gets to be involved and everybody's there for the child. The child has their genetic mirrors. They have everything that they need and they're being raised surrounded by all the love that they need. Mm-hmm. But again, that's an ideal situation. There's really no ethical way to do adoption. And I don't have a solution. People ask me all the time, reform needs to happen. First and foremost, adoptive parents have to be educated.
Yes.
There has to be an
ongoing
education system.
Ongoing is like point. I say it all the time.
Adoption agencies tell you, we do all this follow-up and post-adoption care, and they don't. That could mean like giving them a Christmas card once a year. It doesn't necessarily mean there's continued education or they're following up to make sure the adoptee is safe.
It should be like a legal thing. Every few years you're taking classes again.
Right, because at the end of the day, they're doing home studies. Mm-hmm. But guess who's performing the home studies?
Right.
The adoption agency.
Right.
People you're paying. So, of course, you're going to pass the home study.
Right.
You're paying them $60,000 to pass the home study.
And that's part of where reform needs to happen. That shouldn't be a conflict. That's a conflict of interest.
It's a complete conflict of interest.
And it shouldn't even be a thing.
There's no separation there that keeps the adoptee safe. There's nothing that's keeping the adoptee safe in any way, shape, or form. They're saying, hey, we're going to come into your home. We're going to check it. And there's nothing... First of all, the standards for home studies are kind of a joke to begin with. Like, if you don't have like something locked in your basement, like, you're probably going to pass a home study.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if you're financially stable, which all these people are, and all these things, but passing a home study is a joke. So people are like, but people will hold that that's like the highest standard of like care. Like, if you could pass a home study, you're like the best human being ever. Which just isn't the case. It's just not the case. I know plenty of people that have passed home studies that are horrible human beings and have no business around children. So like, right now we're already at a place where there's no separation of power. There's a huge conflicts of interest between adoption, the adoption agencies, the adoptive parents, and the safety of the adoptee. And I really think that like reforming that is a good place to start.
Yeah, I agree.
Figuring out like how we keep adoptees safe after they've been adopted, whether like there's some sort of check system to make sure that like
ongoing, continuously.
But at the end of the day, the adoptive parents need to be educated, and they think that they're just getting this blank slate that they're going to be able to raise however they want. That's why they want the infants, and that's why they're not adopting from foster care. They don't want to have. They want the blank slate, but they're not getting a blank slate. They're getting a child that's coming with maternal separation trauma.
And I think they honestly believe that they're getting a blank slate, which I don't know where that came from. But
because, like I said, people look at it as, and it's a baby. It doesn't know anything.
It doesn't know anything.
That's insane because, like, when you think about it, like you're just choosing ignorance at that point.
Right.
And I also feel like if you know you're going to be an adoptive parent, you need to know those things so that way you can do what
you're doing.
You're
a disservice to your child. The only person you're doing a disservice to by not educating yourself on adoption and adoption trauma is the child. Because you're just going in completely unprepared to parent a child that is probably going to have issues. Mm-hmm. I mean, their neurodivergence is huge. Most of us have some sort of ADHD, autism, some sort of neurodivergence, huge in the adoption community. And a lot of it's because a lot of it's because we were, a lot of us were born addicted to drugs. But whatever the situation is, there's a lot of that within the community. There's a lot of drug addiction. There's a lot of just people mental health issues. And again, a lot of it is caused by internalizing all of the negative feelings that you had about your adoption and not being able to talk about it growing up. So you end up with all kinds of mental health issues.
I feel like people constantly say like, well, what do you want us to do? And I'm like, and my first thing is, well, how about, like I said about Australia earlier, like, let's take a playbook out of their process. I mean, like, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we like
looking at other places where it works?
And honestly, when they ask about ethics, it's like, well, anything that has to do with commodifying children is not ethical. I don't care what you build on top of it or what positive experience you had. Selling children is not ethical.
How is it ethical to go to an adoption agency and sit there and fill out a literal form? Yes, I'm okay with the baby being addicted to crack, heroin, but not the, you know what I mean? Like, it's like Build-A-Bear. It's literally like Build-A-Bear.
Yeah.
Like,
you're literally you're commodifying a child. And it's so prevalent when it's so easy to see when you're looking at the process to adopt that it's just crazy.
And so I think the problem with our culture is that, the positive side of adoption has always been talked about. It's just like beautiful and rainbows and so amazing. And now that people are starting to speak about the hard stuff and what adoptees go through and the struggles that they have, like, nobody wants to listen to it. And so it's like, well, we need to talk about it more so that way it can change, because the only way that it's going to change is if we change the culture in the United States and the thinking of on adoption.
You got to change the narrative. You have to change the narrative.
Yeah. I mean, and the only way to do that is let adoptees speak.
Right.
And the ones that have positive experiences, that's great. We're all happy. We're all really great. I mean, that's awesome. It's
but
just
listen to all the other ones.
It doesn't negate the negative ones.
And the ones that have the positive experiences, a lot of times don't even realize that they didn't have a positive experience. Like I didn't. I would have told you, again, 10 years ago, I would have told you that I had the best family growing up. I had a great adoption.
Wow.
I was super pro-adoption. The only reason I watched Teen Mom at all was because of your story. I will admit that, like, I've never seen any other Teen Mom other than, like, the season that you were on, because I was watching for the adoption story. But, like, I, like, would have, like, fist fought somebody that said that adoption was bad. Do you know what I mean? When my best friend was like, maybe you should, like, think about it this way. I was like, you're crazy. I had awesome parents. Maybe you just had, like, really shitty parents and that sucks for you. But, like, my parents were great. And I was like, literally went to town on my friend about, and like, the same thing that people say to me now when they're like, happy adoptees. And it really took going to therapy and really taking a deep dive into how I felt growing up and everything else to realize, like, what
So in a way, when
felt.
you see these other adoptees kind of attacking the positive, you know, you're like, okay, I get you. I understand. I was there 10 years ago.
Right. That's what's so frustrating about it, is that, like, I was that person that was, like, really angry at people saying that adoption is negative, because I couldn't in my brain comprehend how giving a child a better home was a negative thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But now I see that you're not necessarily giving a child a better home. You're just giving them a different home.
Right.
Adoption doesn't guarantee you a better life.
Yeah.
It guarantees you a different life.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think people get that very, very confused.
Very confused.
Yeah, because I've had a lot of people write me saying horrible stories. I mean, and I think it comes down to, like, you know, when these adoptive parents aren't trauma informed and they're kind of centering themselves in the whole thing, the kid suffers, and they're writing me messages, and it's clear that bled into them being raised, and it's like,
well, the most common, I mean, hands down, I've been doing this for not a long, long time, but, like, long enough that I've heard thousands of adoption stories. The most common adoption story, hands down, 100%, is rich and fertile woman, does IVF or whatever, can't have her own child, doesn't get any help, adopts to fill a void, puts her infertility trauma on the adoptee, and that's my story, and that's almost every adoptee I know has the same exact story.
Now, did your adoptive mom ever talk about her infertility with you growing up?
No,
Wow.
never.
Okay.
Never.
Interesting.
Never, ever, ever. Never talked about it.
That's crazy.
But I was definitely there. I was definitely there to fill the void. I was definitely there to, like, be the perfect child and like, do all of the things that, like, her child would have done. And when I didn't do the things that, like, her child would have done, it was very obvious that there was disappointment, that I was not her child, that I was not her biological child, because her biological child would have never acted like I acted. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was always that underlying feeling. And she was so busy trying to portray herself as the perfect mom to society that she did everything for me, but never did anything with me. She was my Girl Scout leader. She was my coach. She was the PTO president. She ran the church youth group. But she was never home. She never played with me. She never did anything with me. She never spent time with me. She was just so busy showing society that she was this great mom, because that was, you know, what.
That's what she prioritized.
And what about, and so, like, I mean, I know your dad recently passed.
He did, yeah.
But I feel like when I hear you speak, I feel like your dad, to me, it comes off like you probably felt more comfortable with him in a sense.
And again, this is another thing that I'll die on this hill. The most common story that I hear is narcissistic adoptive mom, passive adoptive father. And that's what you hear all the time. And that's the dynamic, is the mom is the ringleader. The mom is the one that wanted the adoption. The mom is is just, that's it. And the passive dad. And that's what I had. I had a very strong-willed mother and a dad that was kind of just like, he owned a travel agency and basically just, like, traveled all the time and was, like, worked all the time. And he was a great man and a wonderful human being. And I love my dad very, very much, but, like, definitely did not protect me from my adoptive mother. And I think that's the story that we hear most from adoptees, is that they had a very narcissistic mom, and a dad that didn't protect them.
And
And that's the only real complaint that I hear from adoptees about adoptive fathers is that they didn't protect them from the adoptive mother.
Yeah, because
do you hold a little bit of resent? Or
I did resent my dad, definitely.
Anger,
I did actually. I talked about it a lot in therapy that like, and again, my dad was my best friend. My dad definitely tried. There was never any malicious intent for my dad at all whatsoever. But I did definitely resent the fact that he did not do anything to protect me from my mom.
But I know you said in the recent years that you and him had a very good conversation. You talked
we did.
about
it.
We did. Actually, it was like he just passed away in January, and it was probably in maybe November. We were just sitting there, and I was kind of telling him a little bit about like the TikTok videos that I was making, and then I was talking about adoption on like a platform and stuff, and I was like telling him a little bit about like adoption trauma and like just what we talk about, and he's like, oh, that makes sense. Like he's like, I never really thought about it that way, and like I don't think that he just ever really thought about it, and I think that that's the issue with most people. Most people just don't think that there is another side to it. They don't think about like that anybody should feel anything but good about it because it's never been presented to them that way.
Right.
So like my dad just never saw it as anything but like a good thing. Like he, in his mind, they provided me with this great life. You know, I went to private school and college and got a good career and did all these things. And he attributed that to the fact that they were able to provide this life for me. He never really saw it as like abandonment and loss and grief for me. So for him to acknowledge that those things happened was like really important for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I bet that'd be
it was
important.
Very validating.
Yeah.
I never in a million years thought that I would hear him acknowledge that maybe they didn't make the best decisions or that, you know, he didn't protect me from my mom. And he did. He really did acknowledge those things and you know, let me know that. So that was huge. But
if you had like if you were to label it like, okay, if I could go back in time and in order to say I had the best adoption experience, like what as an adoptee, like what could adoptive parents, if they're actually listening, what could they have done? What could they have done better?
Or what can adoptive parents do?
Yeah.
If they're thinking even about adopting. I know it's a hard one.
Don't adopt.
Yeah, I know. It's a hard one. I know.
But if they're already in the situation, what as an adoptee, what could they do?
I think it's really important to listen to adoptees.
Okay.
I think it's incredibly important to listen to adoptees' stories, and I think that it's incredibly important to go to family therapists and to find trauma-informed therapists. I think there's a lack of adoption-informed therapists in this country. There's one in Pennsylvania that I know of.
I can't even find any.
There's one in Pennsylvania that I know of, and actually Brenda, the adoptive mom, Brenda, that's in Texas, she actually does virtual therapy sessions with the woman in Pennsylvania because it was the only one that we could find. And it's so she always recommends people to go to her. But I think that it's really important that you find someone that specializes in this type of family dynamic, and you go regularly so that your child always will know that they are able to talk about anything they want, right? However they feel. I think that really being educated and continuing your education is important.
And that might actually minimize the fog if they're constantly giving this opportunity to speak and express. Like maybe that won't.
Right, and you need to advocate for your child, and you need to support them, and you need to understand that like finding their birth family, like things like you need to like be ready to make these suggestions to them and to encourage them to do these things, because a lot of adoptees are like, oh, I don't want to find my birth family because they're scared that they're going to be rejected, or they're scared, you know what I mean? Secondhand rejection is awful. Like
I couldn't.
Like being rejected by my birth mom again was just was a horrible feeling. But like, so I think a lot of adoptees like are really stuck in like a point where like they don't want to even look. I think that it's really important for adoptive families to understand that and to be like educated on that and how to support them and how to, you know, really just talk to them about everything that has to do with it and have an open conversation.
And do you think like encouraging them to do so, like, hey, encouraging them to look and saying like, if something happens, we're here to support you and we will talk about it or whatever.
I think just encouraging them to feel whatever they want to feel or do whatever they want to do with regards to their own life and their own adoption is super important. And it doesn't happen because of insecurities. Like in reality, like
honestly, if you're an adoptive parent that has insecurities or you're even thinking about adopting, you probably shouldn't adopt.
Right. If you're thinking about adopting and the thought of your child finding their biological family bothers you, don't adopt a child.
Right. Or, them getting older and they're going to want nothing to do with me. Like, if you're sitting there and you're thinking like,
what if they want to search for their like? Well, I'm so scared. Like,
Right.
I mean, there was a very prevalent conversation between your adoptive parents and you, where they basically said our biggest fear is that she's going to want to have a relationship with you when she's older.
And you're saying that fear alone,
you should not adopt.
I
Or
agree.
I think
You're afraid that the child that you're going to raise will want to have a relationship with the person who gave birth to them. Then you should not be in that child's life. You're not a safe person for them. It's not safe.
It's not child-centered.
It's not child-centered.
Yeah, you're literally...
Because they're going to come to you and be like, I want to have a relationship with my parents, and you're going to be like, oh my God, that was my biggest fear.
Right, no. And then they're going to not want to even talk about it.
They're going to internalize it, and then they're never going to want to talk about it again. And that's the other thing. A lot of adoptive children will go to their adoptive parents and say, I would like to find my biological family. And they're met with, and they're met with negativity, and it's a very negative experience. And what if it's or that fear is put in them by their adoptive parents.
And how stuck what's the adoptee?
That's what
totally
was me. I mean, my adoptive mom would regularly say things to me that made me afraid to look. Which I think was why, like, when she passed away, that I kind of just like didn't even like bother to look. I was like, well, what if like everything that she said was right? Like, I didn't, you know what I mean?
And what are the things that she would say?
Again, like, we're basically just saying, like, what if they have moved on and they have a family and you're disturbing their family, or she would say things like, what if she's like a horrible drug addict and like you find out like awful things about her? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was always spun in a negative way. Like, what if you find her and some horrible thing happens? It was never like, what if you find her and she's this wonderful person and wants you in her life? It was always just negative and like, don't do it because something bad could happen.
And so obviously you most recently did find them, and you've met your other siblings.
Some of them, yeah.
Some of them. Okay.
Oh, not all of them.
No.
Oh.
I have, there were 8 of us. One passed away. My sister April passed away. Horrible circumstances. And then I have, so there was Mary Jane was my first sister, and then my brother Michael, and they all were raised in like really chaotic, horrible, abusive environments.
Yeah.
So they're not healthy people.
Right.
So the relationships aren't able to happen at this point.
Are any of them healthy?
I do. My brother Harley, who's again is the youngest and was the only one that was actually kept in that situation. And I think because he was the youngest, was maybe spoiled a little bit. So kind of had more of an opportunity to like normalcy, not necessarily like the greatest, but like was a little enough normalcy that he's okay now.
Okay.
He's awesome. I love him. And I talk to him all the time, and he's got this awesome wife who I absolutely adore. And they're the ones that I actually got to meet when I went to meet my birth mom. So, but I hugged him, and for the first time in my life, I felt family.
Oh, wow.
For the first time in my life, I was like, oh my God, this feels like I know this person, like in a different way than I've ever felt when I hug my adoptive family. Like the bond and like just the feeling I had when I hugged him and my other brother Tony was just so different than anything I've ever felt in my entire
like different
life.
because I think what people don't understand is that like as an adoptee, like I have my adoptive parents, but then their parents are your grandparents, and like you know what I mean? Like, it's a whole branch of and if you never felt a hug like that, I mean, that's got to be really
and I think
intense.
It's
so emotional.
It's like the souls know.
My soul knew that was my family.
Yeah.
My body knew that was my brother. Like I felt everything from I almost felt like everything inside of him, like all his feelings and emotions seeping into it was I don't know how else to describe it. It was a very surreal experience. But I've never felt anything like that in my life.
Wow.
And I can only assume it's because my body knew that was my relative. That was my DNA.
Would you consider like you being reunited as a good experience, bad? Like what would you?
It was an experience.
Okay.
Okay. But you know what? One person that I don't ever really hear you talk about is your birth father.
He passed away. My story is the birth family story is absolutely insane. So my birth mother, I think the reason that I was the only one out of 7 that was given up for adoption, and I think that it was because my birth mother wasn't quite sure who my birth father was.
Oh, okay.
She had the first 2 children with Michael, who did end up being my birth father, and then she left him and she was getting with Tony, and who is the father of the other 5, and I think she was cheating on Tony with Michael and didn't know who the father of the child was, and then was like pressured into giving, like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
The opportunity presented itself, the adoption,
Yes.
and she was like, well, I really don't know who the dad is, and I don't want to, like, you know. And I'm pretty sure that's why I was given up for adoption. But when she went back to Tony, Tony paid somebody to hit my birth father with a car.
What the fuck?
And he ended up in a coma for a while. He came out of the coma, And then Tony paid somebody to run him off the road again, and he ended up passing away the second time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so what the hell?
Yeah. So I never got to meet my birth father. He passed away very young. And so I don't really know anything about him. I do have contact with his family though. So his brother's daughter I talked to, like my first cousin, and then a couple of my second cousins on that side. They all live like 5 minutes from me.
Have you ever seen
Really?
pictures?
Yeah,
Oh my
we go and hang out all the
gosh,
time. Yeah, we
wow.
hang out with them all the time.
Have you seen pictures of him or
I look
anything?
like my birth father. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but I sound just like my birth mother. Our laugh and everything. Like when I heard her laugh, we were cracking up because we laugh exactly the same. My sister and I laugh exactly the same. We both when I as soon as I started having conversations with them, that's when I realized like so much of growing up, like I didn't resemble these people at all. I didn't have any of their mannerisms.
Right.
I didn't have any of their like anything at all. And it was so obvious when I got with my birth family that I didn't have that growing up.
Which is the importance of genetic mirroring. It's really important for kids. And I had no idea what genetic mirroring was until diving into this whole
I mean, I was
thing.
blown away by how much I resembled and acted like these people. Like just
that you weren't even raised with. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
our mannerisms are so similar. It's crazy, right? That I've never even met. But we like even like seeing my sister on FaceTime, like the facial expressions that we make are the same. And like we're only half sisters, but like
Yeah.
like
You're
it's
still
just it's
sisters.
crazy. It's crazy. And like I see like I think that like Nova and Carly look exactly the same. Do you know what I'm
They-
saying?
Right,
So like
right.
like that
Yeah.
genetic mirroring, like to me, like that relationship's so important because like she can see herself in her sister and like. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
those relationships are so unbelievably important for adoptees because like I don't know, you get to see yourself in other people and people
Right.
take that for you know what I mean, take advantage
Right.
of that because that's what you're used to. Like you guys don't know a time when you didn't see
Right.
people that you know what I mean? So like I don't know. It's so obvious to
and
me.
it has to be harder. Like one of my questions too was like it has to be harder because being an adoptee but now an older adoptee and knowing that you had siblings out there, like it's almost harder to have to build these relationships from scratch.
Right.
Yeah.
When in fact, if everything would have been open and honest, it would have just been normal.
Right, and I can't help but think, like, and I know that this is just me being me, but, like, I can't help but thinking, like, if I had known they existed growing up, like, what could I have done to make their lives better? And, like, maybe they wouldn't have had such hard lives, or, like, they wouldn't have turned out the way that they did, or, like, I could have helped them, or, like, and I know that that's just me being me.
Well,
I'm a
yeah.
helper, and, like, that's just, like, my initial response to things, but, like, that's how I feel about it. I'm like, what if I grew up knowing them? Like, could I have called them and like you know?
Could you have been a resource maybe that
Right,
they
like
didn't have?
they never had any guidance. Could I have like guided them down the right path, or like you know what I mean? Like who knows if I could have been a positive influence on their life? You
Right.
know what I mean? Like they probably would have been a negative influence on mine. But like at the same time, like I've always been a very confident person and not very easily swayed or
Right.
influenced. So I
Yeah.
feel like I could have been a positive influence on their life. And I just the fact that opportunity wasn't given to me, I will never forgive my parents for taking away the opportunity to have siblings growing up. I mean, I had an adopted brother. That relationship is what it was.
Well, right, and it's just not the same. Just having your
There was no bond. I mean,
Right.
again, you're putting your
Yeah.
adopted family, like you're literally putting strangers in a house together, and
Right.
and then just
Expecting
expecting
them-
them to
yeah.
bond. And
Right.
like sometimes strangers don't bond with each other. Like you're not going to bond with everybody.
Right.
So like I really just never felt that bond with my brother. And again, I had an adopted mom that triangulated things and always
Right.
pinned us against
Right.
each other, and like that was the dynamic too. And I think that's a very common dynamic in adoptive homes, especially when there is an adoptive and a biological child.
I was
in the
just
home.
going to bring that up
Yeah.
because I've had a really crazy stories lately of adoptees saying like you saying the first hug that you got from your biological brother was so intense, and I've heard people say I never knew that it was possible to feel this relationship with a sibling because I was adopted, but he was biological and actually was born. The specific girl I'm talking about, she was older, and
Yeah.
then she was adopted because they didn't think they could.
I
have
think I know who
kids.
you're talking
Okay,
about, yeah.
and then her brother was a biological, and
Yeah.
she said I literally like
does something to you, has to.
She said I could sense the shift in the house. I could feel it,
Yes.
like, and it's like. And, it
And
was
they
something-
know, and those when you talk to those adopted children as adults, they very much knew that they were the adopted child
Yep.
in the house, not the biological one.
And
It
she
was
said
always
that
very
nothing
obvious.
specific happened or was said. It just that you could just feel it.
was just a
that my
feeling.
whole life changed the moment he.
That's so sad.
I mean, it's something that I don't think other people think about. Like you can not all kids are adopted. Some of them are adopted and biological, and that's creates a really...
A lot of times people adopt it because they're told they can't have kids, and then they get
They
pregnant and
do.
they have a child, but then they're like, oh my God, all my prayers have been answered. I can have my own kid.
Right.
But then you're like, wait, but you spent all this time convincing this other child that you're my real child. Then
Yeah.
what? So then there's that confusion too, because again, whenever people are like, and that's the other thing, like, as a kid, people are constantly like, well, what about your real parents? People constantly say to adoptees, well, who are your real parents, or where are your real parents? And then you're like, well, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Who are my
Right.
real parents?
Right.
So then you're given that responsibility of figuring out, like, well, these people are raising me and they're there for me full time and they're
So-
doing all the parental
so I
responsibilities.
guess they're my real
they're
baby?
my,
Right,
but these
right.
parents, that these people like actually created me and gave birth to me. So like and now as an adult, I have a full understanding that the people the person that grew me and created me and gave birth to me, that's my real parent.
Right.
Like that person created my life. I'm alive because of that person.
And I think people kind of like, that's when they're like, oh, well, my real parent, they're like, no, that was your real mother. And then
Right.
people get like the parent and then versus a mother versus a parent are two different things, or you don't have to be, you don't have to be a parent in order to be a mom is what they're
Right.
kind of, and I think that obviously that probably comes from adoptees who are probably still in the fog
Yeah.
or whatever. And I also noticed that gets really like, they do not like to be told anything about the fog. They get very upset and say, don't label me. And it's weird. It's a tricky situation. I'm not trying. I just...
You just want people to look inward and
Yeah.
maybe just take it, maybe look at it. Like maybe you don't have to like
You can still be mad about it. But just try.
try.
Yeah.
Just try.
Yeah.
Try to
No,
have
they get
some
mad
other
at it. They get
perspective,
mad at it.
or like just try to understand that maybe you were led to believe something that isn't fully accurate. Like that's important. Like, or like just acknowledge that two things could be true at once.
Right.
Yeah.
You can acknowledge the fact that you had a good adoption,
Yep.
but that adoption is not a great thing.
Yeah,
I feel like
perfect.
even
Like,
with birth parents, for us, like it's like two feelings a lot all the
Yeah,
time.
all the
It can
time.
be happy and sad, or make you angry and sad at the same time. Like it all is.
And we talk about birth parent. I think we went through our own little fog for years after placing.
I mean,
It
you
was-
definitely did. I mean, you got a lot of criticism because you actually helped you actually went and helped another birth mother give her child up for adoption.
Yeah,
And
I
you
think-
got a lot of backlash for that, but I think that was just you being in the fog. Like you thought you were doing the right thing, and you didn't really understand that.
Yeah,
like,
and I've seen people say like, "Oh, you pressured her into it," and I was like, "No. This was 4 years after Carly was placed, and this birth mom asked me, "Will you be in the room with me?" And she had nobody, and I was like, "Of course I will sit."
right,
with
like you just felt like you don't want the person to be alone.
No, I don't
Right.
want her to be alone. And then when her son was born, she kicked everybody out. She didn't let the adoptive parents in there, nothing, and she was just her and her son for 3 days.
But
and I
looking back,
applauded
what would you tell her now if you were presented with that same information now, and she came to you and said like, "Will you be in the room? What should I do?" Like, what different information would you give her now?
I think that I would try to talk to her and point out all of the support that she does have in her life.
Yeah.
And tell her, like, you can do this. Like, this doesn't have to be your only option. Right. Because she did have a very supportive family. Like, yes, it was out of wedlock, or whatever, but that doesn't matter. And that doesn't define you. No. There's a lot of things, of course, I wish I could go back and tell her.
We grow up. I know people ask me things all the time. Like somebody asked me the other day, like, what would I, like when we were on the live, they said, like, what would I have told you? Like if you were, you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know.
Right?
I was like, that's a really serious question. But like, and like the answer that Brenda gave was one that I really loved. And she would have just told you that like, you're worthy of being a mom.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're worthy of keeping your child. You're worthy of parenting your child. And you are. And you've proven that.
Well,
the two of you have proven that you're very worthy of parenting and being
But
good
I
parents.
think part of the coercion stuff was that that I didn't really realize back then was that everyone kept telling us, all the adults kept saying, in order to be the best parent, you have to not be one. And it was like, all right. So any moment, any thought that we would have, and me and Kate talk about it, we looked at each other in the hospital multiple times, and we didn't have to say words, but we just knew, like, let's just run. Let's just get out of here with the baby, and we'll just run. And we don't care where the hell we go. And it's like,
It was like telepathically.
yeah, but it was like afterwards we're like, yeah, but even thinking about it made us feel guilty because everyone's telling us, well, the best thing you can do if you want to be a good parent, don't be one. And it was like, okay, all right. So it's like, I think looking back at me being now any birth parent, I would say I would first ask, why are you doing this?
Yep.
And then after you tell me why, I would say, well, there's a solution for that.
Yeah.
And
Whatever it is, we're gonna
without
find
having to
it.
relinquish. There's a solution for that. Let me help you find those resources because I think that's what it comes down to. We were just talking to Gretchen Sisson the other day, and she was talking about how the number one reason is financial resources. Like, $1,000.
And I think now's a really good time to mention that there are organizations out there that do help, that are there to help.
Yeah.
Saving Our Sisters is one of them.
Yeah.
There's wonderful organizations that you can contact. Again, Saving Our Sisters. If you're a birth mother in need and you want to keep your child, there are people out there that will help you. It's on my list of things. One of my goals is to start a service like that in our area. You guys have expressed wanting to help with that. I would love to make a nonprofit organization that fully supports birth moms with, and even afterwards, like offering career services and education services, housing, childcare.
It's so important.
Just a full service. How do you correct a problem? You fix society so that problem isn't there to begin with.
It starts culturally.
Absolutely.
We have to culturally shift it. So that
we're not going to change a $25 billion industry because if billions of dollars are involved, no one's in a hurry to make changes or reform it or do anything to it, because then maybe it wouldn't be worth so much money.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So how do we take away the supply to that industry? We help birth mothers keep their children.
So that was going to be my question for you is like, so what, where can people find you? And also kind of what are you going to continue doing as an adoptee to try to change this whole system?
Really that's on my list of things to do right now. I have been overloaded with, obviously I've had there's been, some personal situations that have put a lot of things on hold in my life right now. But, that is my goal is to try to get this nonprofit organization off the ground and do something, with that. I'm still on TikTok, Adoptee advocate Erin. I just make videos. Really, it's just to talk about it. I really just want people to understand that there's a different narrative out there, and it's, it may be scary to hear it first. Yeah. But in the grand scheme of things, we're really just trying to center adopted children. We're just trying to help children have a better life.
Absolutely.
And be able to be well taken care of and have people be educated, because they're not going to stop adoption. People that are against adoption and want to abolish adoption, it's a great idea.
Yeah,
and obviously I'm anti-adoption, and if we could do away with adoption completely, I think that would be great. But it's just not. I don't think it's a feasible situation right now in this country. We have to figure out a healthy, good way to provide safe external care.
Baby steps.
Right.
And
I think one of the big things that people do push is really finding a way to do it where the child doesn't lose their identity. They don't lose their medical records. They don't, you know what I mean? Because that's really the worst part of it. And that was really what got me searching for my birth family to begin with, was that I had kids. And you go to the doctor and they're like, what's your medical history? And I'm like, I don't know. My kids don't know. And I was like, well, maybe I should find my birth family because I would love to have my medical records. I still haven't been able to get a coherent medical history out of anybody in my family. So
honestly, that could change with federal law. Adoption.
There has to be baby steps into changing, but that right there is
there is
huge.
a database where there is an actual database that's anonymous where that information can be left. I don't know a lot about it, but someone just told me about it the other day.
Oh, wow.
So the database does exist, but you have to rely on the birth families to enter the information in and keep up with it. And I think that a lot of times you're 16 and you're giving a child up for adoption, you don't really have a medical history because you're 16.
Right.
Nothing's really happened to you yet. You know what I mean?
filled out whatever did at that point.
You don't really know. You know what happened to your parents and stuff, but you personally don't really have much. So it's something that has to be ongoing. There has to be a way to anonymously update the system as time goes on. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease at 35 years old, but I would have never known about it, but it's genetic. So I would have to be able to go back into a system and be able to update that, and people will be able to look at it, as life goes on. But these systems need to exist because we have no rights. Adoptees have absolutely no rights at all whatsoever, basic human rights to access to our information.
They're almost forced into it. They have no choice, which is why.
I was 5 days old. I didn't consent to being adopted.
Right.
I had no choice in the matter. I had no choice in losing my medical history, my family, everything. I lost everything. And I wasn't able to get it back until I was 18 years old. That's 18 years of my life where I had no idea where I came from, who in my family existed, what my medical history was, just nothing.
Which isn't fair.
And like you said, how you lost everything. Tyler and I always say that the adoptees, most of all, and the birth parents lose everything.
Yes.
While the adoptive parents literally are gaining everything. They lose nothing.
They lose nothing.
And I think that...
But they love to talk about their loss.
I know.
Yeah, they do.
Yes, it's very,
during that same interview where Brandon was talking about the fear of her wanting to have a relationship with you, it was all we heard about was Teresa's loss and the infertility and the loss and the infertility and the loss. And it's you need to heal that before you take on someone else's child.
Right. agree.
Like if you're literally crying about the fact that you can't have your own child, you're not ready to take on someone else's child. If you're literally in tears, crying about the fact that you can't have your own child, you're not going to do someone else's child justice.
Right.
Adoption
You're just getting them to fill the void of not being able to have your own child.
Yep.
Which isn't child-centered.
No, and they're going to know it.
For.
They're going to know it. There's no way.
It's supposed to be child-centered, yes. Yeah. So I think, what was I going to say? So I think people that are, like, whether you're listening or watching, and if you're interested in learning more, and I think everybody should take even just 5 minutes out of their day to educate themselves about adoptees and listen to adoptees. If you go to TikTok, you can search, like Adoptee Talk or Adoptee Talk or anything like that, and just listen to what these people are saying. I think it's very educational, and just try to put yourselves in their shoes and understand where they're coming from. Obviously, this is our first podcast with our first adoptee and one of our friends, and it's very important to be talked about. And I just want to say thank you, Erin, for always being vulnerable, always being there, always helping educate us, and always allowing Ty and I to ask like an adoptee questions so that we can learn and make sure we're kind of navigating in the right way.
Yeah, because we message you the same day and not even know it. I'm like,
I know.
Erin today. I was like, oh, you talked to Erin today? So did I.
Right. And then now we're all like, she's our adoptee mom. That's what we're going to call her, But like, seriously, just for you being vulnerable and coming on and talking. And I think what we're all trying to do is very important work. Yeah. And I hope, I'm hoping this won't be the last time that you're on, just the first time.
Yeah. And I hope that you guys don't get discouraged by people telling you not to talk about adoption in a negative way. And I also want to point out the fact that people say all the time that you say negative things about Carly's parents and you say negative things about adoption. And I've been talking to you guys for a year now, and I've literally never heard you say a negative word about their parents. You even in private, like even
where
in private,
and no one would know.
Right. You're not out here bad mouthing people. You're not out here bad mouthing adoption. You're just trying to educate people so that they can be healthier in the ways that they're raising their adopted children. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're using your voice to help advocate for your daughter, really, is what you're doing. I mean, and I think that that's a beautiful thing. And I think that a lot of adoptees can relate to you and really appreciate you because we see how much you love your daughter. And we all wish that we had that. So, like, for us, having you in our community has been, like, a really beautiful thing.
I hope
because
so.
It gives us hope. I mean, it really does. It gives us hope that, like, our parents wanted us. You know what I mean? That they will fight for us and that they will advocate for the adoption community that she's a part of. I mean, at the end of the day, she's a part of that.
Yeah, I don't want people to think that we're coming here trampling all over. It's that,
and you're not
inserting ourselves.
Not.
Like we're just trying to, make a platform that people can hear.
Right, and I mean, because people are going to be giving their children up for adoption. Like that's not going to stop. So how can we help them be better parents to their adopted children?
Therapy.
Yes,
so much
a trauma-informed therapist that understands adoption. If you have an
100%.
Adopted child.
So I'm hoping this won't be the last time, but just the first time.
I would love to come back. Yes, definitely. I'm excited to see you talk to all the other adoptees that are coming through. You have some really good guests coming on.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you, guys. You're the best.
Are you looking for a new job or want a career change? Look no further than Monster.com. Need a little help standing out? Our expert resume writing services will make sure you shine. Want to brush up on your interview skills? Engage with our AI interview prep tool. Want some advice on negotiating your new salary? Visit our salary tools and extensive library of career advice articles, and you'll have all the tips and tricks you'll need to succeed. Visit Monster.com today and take the first step towards your career. Monster.com. Find your right job fit.